From Manila to the globe, this is World Newsfeed, bringing you the biggest stories shaping our times. Good morning, I'm Raine Musñgi. Let's dive into the headlines making a global impact. Russia unleashed its second big attack on Ukraine's energy infrastructure this month on Thursday, triggering deep power cuts across the country. Ukraine's Air Force said Russia used 91 missiles and 97 drones in Thursday's attack. 12 of those had hit their targets, most of which were energy and fuel facilities. Damage to infrastructure facilities was recorded in 9 regions across the country, the 11th major strike on the energy system since March. Over 1 million people lost power in the immediate aftermath of the strikes, and millions more had their existing schedule of rolling power cuts intensified just as temperatures across Ukraine hovered around zero. Small and medium businesses were forced to produce their own electricity.
We have power banks, we have head torches that can be charged. We have everything we need. We are prepared. It's not the first time it happens. Thanks God, water is back as there was no water yesterday. It's terror of Ukraine's civilians. Russian bastards, I am so much fed up with this, honestly.
Trade does not go well in general. Clothing is not essential. Food is essential. And today is an illustration of that. When power cuts are introduced according to the schedule, then you can plan accordingly. People know that they can come at certain hours. Today, since the morning, the situation has been unclear. It is very cold inside. Neither payment terminal nor cash register works because of power outage. I cannot provide services to customers. You cannot see the things here on display. You cannot try them on because it is very cold. But we will get over this. Thank God we are alive. Glory to Ukraine.
Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin said Moscow had struck in response to Ukraine's strikes on Russian territory with U.S. medium-range Attack-MS missiles. He said Russia's future targets could include decision-making centers in Kyiv. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Russia of a despicable escalation, saying it had used cruise missiles with cluster munitions.
Putin's actions with new missiles seek to disrupt attempts to end war.
President Putin said that there were no preconditions to start talks with Ukraine on a possible peace settlement, but that terms he set out in June for a deal remained unchanged. The Russian leader said that Russia would end the war in Ukraine only if Kyiv agreed to drop its NATO ambitions and hand over the entirety of 4 provinces claimed by Moscow, demands Kyiv swiftly rejected as tantamount to surrender.
I did not formulate any preconditions. I have never said that the preconditions for the start of the talks on Ukrainian settlement are as such. I simply spoke about our conditions for peace. I think that the conditions for peace, lasting and stable peace, could be such, and such. They were presented in great detail in my speech during my meeting with the top representatives of the Russian Foreign Ministry in June.
But Putin also warned that Russia would use all weapons at its disposal against Ukraine if Kyiv were to acquire nuclear arms or produce dirty bombs laced with radioactive material in order to spread contamination. In that case, Putin said Russia would respond appropriately.
If the country with which we are currently fighting becomes a nuclear-armed power, what should we do? In this case, we will adopt and use everything, exactly all the means of destruction at Russia's disposal. Everything. Today, it will be almost impossible to make a nuclear weapon in Ukraine from scratch. Well, something dirty, so-called a dirty bomb. Well, of course, just waste from a nuclear power plant can be collected. But even in this case, the response will be absolutely appropriate to the threats faced to the Russian Federation.
The New York Times reported last week that some unidentified Western officials had suggested U.S. President Joe Biden could give Ukraine nuclear weapons before he leaves office. Intelligence sources from the United States say the U.S. decision to allow Ukraine to fire American weapons deeper into Russia has not increased the risk of a nuclear attack. 5 sources familiar with U.S. intelligence told Reuters, despite Russian President Vladimir Putin's increasingly bellicose statements, a nuclear attack by Russia is unlikely. But they anticipate that Moscow would likely expand a campaign of sabotage against European targets to increase pressure over its support for Ukraine. Well, Ukraine urged its partners to speed up its military aid, saying quicker delivery of critical battlefield equipment was more important than drafting more men. A senior U.S. administration official said Ukraine was not mobilizing enough new soldiers to replace those lost on the battlefield and urged Kyiv to reduce the mobilization age from 25 to 18 years old. Kyiv's forces are battling back a grinding Russian advance along a sprawling front line where Moscow's troops are capturing village after village in a bid to eventually seize the entire industrialized Donbas region. The Ukrainian official also described Russian President Putin's rhetoric as blackmail, aimed at discouraging Kyiv's partners and testing U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, who has vowed to seek a swift end to the conflict without specifying how.
And we expect those countries that have urged everyone to avert expanding of the war to react to the statements voiced by Putin today. It is very important if we treat it fairly. These are the statements, this blackmail is the expansion of war and the threat of expansion of war, an acceptable one. And Putin obviously tries to influence the new US administration by those statements, and he tries to basically show that this new administration is weak. He tries to test the resolve, and show that he only wants war. He only wants war, and he only wants to expand his aggression. But again, we are now in a situation when we need more equipment to arm all the people that have already been mobilized. And we think that the first priority is to send quicker and faster military aid.
France, which is under pressure over its stance on an international arrest warrant issued for Israel's prime minister, declined on Thursday to say whether it would be prepared to arrest Russian President Vladimir Putin under a similar warrant. The ICC accuses Putin of the war crime of illegally deporting hundreds of children from Ukraine, although Russia is not a signatory to the ICC's founding treaty. French Foreign Ministry spokesman Christophe Lemoine said on Thursday that should Putin set foot on French soil, while France would apply international law in all its aspects, the question of immunity was complex, and that states sometimes had differing views on the issue. Meanwhile, the German government summoned the Russian ambassador over the expulsion of 2 German journalists and accused Moscow of spreading false information about the treatment of Russian media in Germany. Russia had on Wednesday said it would expel 1 correspondent and 1 cameraman from Germany's ARD broadcaster in a symmetrical response to German moves against journalists from Russia's Channel 1 that Berlin denied undertaking.
Und ich möchte nochmal unterstreichen, weil wir das zu Beginn.
I would like to emphasize this once again, as we already experienced this at the beginning of this war. This propaganda battle with false claims, which we are hearing and experiencing again in this case. The accusation that we have restrictions on press freedom in Germany or in Europe is simply wrong. That is why there is absolutely no reason to link this in any way to the current expulsion of ARD employees. It is unacceptable. Here in Germany, the responsible state authority made a residence decision against 2 employees of a Russian broadcaster. An appeal can be lodged against this decision, and that is precisely the difference between a constitutional procedure and an arbitrary decision.
Well, Russian President Putin denied deliberately using his dog to intimidate German Chancellor Angela Merkel at a meeting in 2007 that became a notorious diplomatic incident. Merkel wrote in her new memoir, Freedom, that knowing Putin sometimes brought his black Labrador Coney to meetings with foreign guests, she had asked an aide the previous year to request Putin's team not to bring out Coney in her presence because she was afraid of dogs. When they met in Moscow in 2006, she said Putin respected the request but presented her with a large stuffed dog, remarking that it didn't bite. But at an encounter in Sochi the following year, the large dog wandered around the room and walked right up to Merkel while the chancellor, visibly uncomfortable, sat alongside Putin in front of photographers and TV cameras. In her book, the retired chancellor described the incident as an ordeal, saying Putin seemed to enjoy the situation. Asked about the incident on Thursday, Putin denied he had been aware of Merkel's phobia and said he had later apologized to her.
This was strange and unexpected for me. Now we are talking with you, and all this will be published in the media. So I appeal to her once again and say, Angela, please, forgive me. I did not want to cause you any mental distress. On the contrary, I wanted to create a favorable environment for our discussion.
Up next, an update on the first day of the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah. Keep it here on World Newsfeed on BNC.
This is The Scorecard, where you score the latest sports news and in-depth views. I'm Anton Rojas.
Get ready, be prepared, get to the latest stories, updates, and reports about what's happening in the world of sports. Hosted by Anton Rojas.
The Scorecard, where sports is our business and business is our sport, right here.
The Scorecard on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Good morning, everyone!
Let's begin your morning with these people that gives you the hottest information.
We are happy to share with you some magic that will make you smile, dance, and feel the love.
With excitement and fun to start your day.
It's a light of the morning with positivity, joy, and a sprinkle, a dash of fun.
Join Paulo Del Rosario, Ann Asis Carrillo, and Monique Tuzon.
Ready to start our day with a smile.
It's a beautiful day.
Welcome back to World Newsfeed. Israeli military warplanes fired on southern Lebanon after detecting Hezbollah activity at a rocket storage facility on the first Israeli airstrike, a day after ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah took hold. There was no immediate word on casualties from Israel's aerial attack on Thursday, which came hours after the Israeli military said it fired on people trying to return to certain areas in southern Lebanon. Beirut's state-run national news agency said 2 people were wounded. The news agency also reported that Israeli targeted civilians in Markaba, close to the border, without providing further details. Tel Aviv said it fired artillery in 3 other locations near the border. The incident stirred unease about the agreement brokered by the U.S. and France, which includes an initial 2-month ceasefire in which Hezbollah militants are to withdraw north of the Litani River and Israeli forces are to return to their side of the border. A UNESCO-listed temple of historic Baalbek city, an Ottoman-era building, was reduced to rubble by an Israeli airstrike.
Even during the strike, when it happened, we went to see the damage. We felt a deep wound, as if our hearts were bleeding, because we are losing our collective memory, the one we're trying to preserve. Because this here is history. The Manshay is more than 100 years old. In addition to that, it's at the entrance of our city. We lost beloved ones. We lost landmarks. We lost pure bloods. But I tell you one thing, this loss is not to be compared to losing one's land or 1 inch of it that we will not lose it.
Israeli military strikes killed at least 26 Palestinians across the Gaza Strip also on Thursday. Medics said as forces stepped up their bombardment of central areas and tanks pushed deeper into the north and south of the enclave. In Nuseirat, one of Gaza's 8 historic refugee camps, Israeli planes carried out several airstrikes, destroying a multi-story building and hitting roads outside mosques. According to Gaza officials, Israel's 13-month campaign in Gaza, with the avowed intent of eradicating Hamas militants, has killed nearly 44,200 people and displaced nearly all the enclave's population at least once. Iran has informed the UN nuclear watchdog of plans to install more uranium-enriching centrifuges at its Fordo and Natanz plants. A confidential report by the International Atomic Energy Agency said on Thursday that Iran also plans to bring machines recently installed at the plants online. Iran informed the IAEA that 8 new cascades or clusters of advanced IR-6 centrifuges at Fordo would enrich up to 5% purity. A report to member states seen by Reuters made no mention of Iran's enrichment of up to 60% purity, reaching close to nuclear weapons grade. In Africa, 15 people have died and at least 100 more are missing in Uganda. That's after a landslide triggered by heavy rains buried dozens of homes across several villages in the eastern region. The Uganda Red Cross Society said in a statement at least 40 households were completely buried, while others were partially damaged. Here in Asia, at least 27 people are killed in the Indonesian province of Sumatra following torrential rain since last week that caused flash floods and landslides in 4 different districts. Heavy rains also triggered floods in the provincial capital of Medan, forcing a delay in votes for a regional election in some polling stations. Indonesian rescuers toiled through mud and fallen trees to search for passengers trapped in a minibus buried in mud and other victims after flash floods and landslides hit Sibulangit district and several other locations in North Sumatra province. Country's weather agency has warned that extreme weather is expected in Indonesia toward the end of the year as the La Niña phenomenon increases rainfalls across the tropical archipelago. In Jakarta, people wandered through flood water after the city experienced flash floods on Thursday. Local media revealed that 51 neighborhood units were inundated with water, and in the most affected areas, water levels reached 2.6 meters. After the break, we'll bring you reactions to the world's toughest law against social media for minors. That's next on World Newsfeed, only on BNC.
In the world of business, expansion is inevitable.
So I was a serial dater.
Not just a serial entrepreneur.
Yes.
You need fresh perspectives.
Different perspectives, different capabilities.
The sense of fulfillment, the sense of accomplishment. It's like you gave birth.
The relationships we have, how we treat our people, for me, that is the essence.
I'm Ces Orenia Drilon at ito ang Usapang Bilyonaryo.
Isang oras ng makabuluhan at magulong talakayan. Pabayaan na lang natin silang lumubog, no?
Speaking of logic, Sec, ano yung
ay baguhin yung narrative.
Bawat issue nga, may iba't ibang anggulo, may iba't ibang kwento, iba't ibang perspektibo.
Mahal na mahal na tayong tamaan. Siguro.
Hindi rin.
Speaking of truth, salamat sa ating mga viewers ngayon.
Ito talaga mga kongresista na ito.
Dito lamang sa Cuatro Cargos!
At BNC, 12 noon doesn't mean break. But breaking news, biggest stories, and latest updates.
The International Monetary Fund urges countries to implement fiscal tightening policy. Authorities raided a pogo hub just hundreds of meters away from the Senate building.
May Rodriguez, Newsfeed at noon on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.
ginalaw po kasi yung CCTV. Do you do that in PAO? The upper chamber was invaded.
You're putting me in a difficult spot. Well, I disagree with that. Hindi kami natutuwa sa
Thought
ganun.
baka fake news.
Laking problema nun.
Naging klaro ho ba sa inyo? May Davao Death Squad o wala?
There was an admission.
Sinabi na niya yun.
They went there with one mission.
To kill.
We ask the questions, we tackle the issues, we clarify matters, and we get on point.
Welcome back to World Newsfeed. Social media will soon be banned for under 16-year-olds in Australia after a new law set a benchmark with one of the world's toughest regulations targeting big tech. It forces tech giants from Instagram and Facebook owner Meta to TikTok to stop minors logging in or face fines of up to $32 million. A parliamentary inquiry this year heard evidence from parents of children who self-harmed due to social media bullying. Domestic media backed the ban, led by Rupert Murdoch's News Corp. The ban also faced opposition from privacy advocates and some child rights groups, but the latest polls show 77% of the population wanted it. Australia's digital industry group said the bill was rushed through Parliament. Google and Meta, for their part, asked for the ban to be delayed until an age verification trial finishes in mid-2025. The ban, considered a political win for Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, could strain Australia's relationship with key ally, the US. Australia has also made social media platforms pay media outlets royalties for sharing their content, and now plans to threaten them with fines for failing to stamp out scams.
But for too many young Australians, social media can be harmful. Almost 2/3 of 14 to 17-year-old Australians have viewed extremely harmful content online, including drug abuse, suicide or self-harm, as well as violent material. Social media has a social responsibility. We know they can and should do better to address harms on their platforms. That's why we're making big changes to hold platforms to account for user safety. This bill will impose significant penalties for breaching the minimum age obligation. This will be as high as $49.5 million for bodies corporate, consistent with serious offences set out in the Privacy Act 1988 and the Competition and Consumer Act 2010.
So the technology is there and ready and already in place, and Australians are getting ready and starting to use it day to day. I think the key thing for me, and something that we see sort of across the conversation in the country, is how do we make sure that we implement this and get this right in a way that is privacy preserving, and we give Australians choice, and we don't continue to overshare the amount of data or over collect the amount of personal information from Australians.
Well, Australians say social media responsibility lies with parents, not government.
I don't think it's a good thing, really, because I think that it's not going to stop it, and also the government's taking control of things that is parents' responsibility. Because parents are going to keep still using their social media, aren't they? And their kids are going to be watching them doing it. So what's the point, really?
It's top-down structure. It's as though the government owns the children. No, they don't. No one owns the children, actually. They're individual souls, and the government can't own people. And they can't tell parents what to do with their children. And what it is actually censoring for everyone. So it's a digital ID surveillance for everyone. So I will be going off all social media platforms myself, because I won't be getting involved. And I think a lot of people will do that.
Well, the Australian ban on social media for children under 16 received far-reaching reactions from around the world, even as a number of countries have already vowed to curb social media use by children through their legislation, though Australia policy is the most stringent. London residents expressed mixed feelings for the prohibition.
I mean, that's kind of crazy to me. I grew up with social media, and the year I was born was literally I think the year the iPhone 5 came out. So I'm just super used to growing up with it. And I feel like people under the age of 16 right now wouldn't know how to live without their phones and social media. Like, it'd be a really hard change for them.
I don't think it would be a good thing because it's already just a part of our daily lives. It would be hard to get people off of it. So
I think it's good to have some sort of limitations for younger kids because there's a lot of stuff online which is quite dangerous and scary for young kids to see. So I think it's good to have some sort of ban.
It could be a good thing. I don't know what would be the perfect age to introduce people to social media. Growing up, we didn't have social media in my day, and there wasn't so much pressure to. I think now you've got such an insight to celebrities and not just celebrities, but people that may be able to do things that you can't afford to do.
So, I mean, we have young girls, and they don't have social media, and it's been really great for their mental health and for our family life. And we're more in the moment, and we spend great family time together, and it's not a distraction. So it works for our family, and I think it could work for others too.
Teenagers in Madrid criticized the new ban passed by Australia, saying it was out of touch with reality. They added prevention and education are better solutions instead of a total ban.
No me gustaría nada que pasase eso en España.
I would not like this to happen in Spain. They should have done a demonstration because this is very crazy. I think it's bad because many people work in this, and us underage watch it all the time. It's something that we like a lot.
I'm really strongly against it because I feel like we are a new generation that is accustomed of having social media in our life, and it's something we use on a daily basis. And I think restricting our use isn't going to help us. A mí no me parece bien.
I don't like it because we live in a society that is advancing with technology and social media. We are a generation that is called technological for a reason, because social media are part of our lives. I think that we should find another solution rather than prohibit social media.
Parisians said they understood, but that the ban is a bit late. Countries, including France and some U.S. states, have passed laws to restrict access for minors without a parent's permission. But the Australian ban is absolute. A full under-14s ban in Florida is being challenged in court on free speech grounds.
Very good thing because it protects young people from the dangers that social media represent for them.
As for me, I understand why they limited it, and it does seem important for me to limit and monitor it. But I think that 16 is a bit late, and I think it's a bit out of touch compared to the reality of young people today. It's the digital era, so they're very present on social media. Everything is done today online, and so I think this is a bit out of touch with reality.
That's all for now. Thank you so much for joining us. Catch up with us again tomorrow at 10 when we bring you the world in 30 minutes only on World Newsfeed. Follow the Money comes next. Keep it here on BNC.